Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Snow Peak Lago 1, and this is their minimalist one-person backpacking tent, and it looks like it's actually going to be discontinued. It's currently on the last chance list on the website right now. Depending on when you're watching this, it might already be gone, but yeah, it's kind of a shame. This is a really cool tent, and I'd say probably one of my favorite things about it is just the pack size. I mean, you can see this thing is incredibly small. It can fit inside your backpack because of the unique pole structure design. We're going to get more onto that later in this because there's pros and cons to it. So the Lago 1 comes at just under 3 pounds. It weighs 2.9 pounds, and like I said, the pole structure on this one is kind of more unique. It goes with more of the trekking pole style tent, but it actually comes with the poles that you'll need to set it up. Personally, I'd probably always bring the poles with me, but if you want to shave off a little bit of weight, you could leave those poles behind and just insert your tips into the top section right there. But yeah, setting this thing up is pretty simple actually. It's a little different than most backpacking tents that I've owned. So in the past, I've only had freestanding backpacking tents, which means that you don't need to stake it in for the whole thing to stand up. The Lago one is not a freestanding tent at all. You are going to have to stake this thing in, otherwise it's just going to be completely on the floor. So to set up the Lago 1, we're going to begin at the foot box, and this pole intentionally has a curved shape to it, and it goes perfectly with the lines of the tent. So inserting this first pole is probably the hardest part about assembling this entire tent. There is a couple tricks you're going to want to pay attention to when you are assembling this, and this goes for all tents actually in general. But after you get the first one into the grommet there, you're going to want to make sure to tug on the sleeve just a little bit and push the pole through just to give a little bit of extra wiggle room there to get it into place in the next slot there. And if you don't do this, you're going to risk breaking the pole or breaking the fabric. And this is the case with all tents and all shelters as well. You want to make sure you always kind of shove the pole as far through you can to the other side before trying to put it into either the pin slot or one of the grommets like on this tent right here. And after you get this done, the next step is to assemble the inner tent pole, which is totally different than anything I've ever seen. So essentially there's just two straight poles that are holding up this curved piece for the roof line, and you just insert the rubber ends into the top there, and you're going to see some reinforced corners in the bottom of the Lago 1. That's where the poles are going to rest. Also, if you're using trekking poles, same thing. You would just put the tips into the top there, and your trekking poles would rest right in those reinforced corners. After you do this, you're going to just rest everything down, and you're going to start by staking out the foot box first, and then you're going to pull the opposite end right at the head of the tent. And once you do that, you're going to start seeing that the entire tent just lifts up and starts taking form. So after we finish staking in the corners, then we're going to go ahead and throw over the rain fly over the entire thing. And keep in mind, there's a little bit of Velcro on the ridge section of the rain fly, so you're going to want to make sure you line that up with the pole. But yeah, other than that, there's only one entrance on this tent, and there's only one vestibule, so there's no extra space on the other side. Instead, you get a little bit of extra room on that side of the tent for putting your backpack or any gear that you want to put inside your tent for that matter. And I actually prefer that. Even when we went backpacking, we always kept our bags inside of our tent, and just to keep shoes and stuff like that outside the tent. But yeah, you get a decent sized vestibule out here, and you could certainly fit a bag out here if you want it. And a pair of shoes, but that's pretty much the extent of that. And speaking of inside the tent, you can only fit a standard size backpacking mattress, which is a 20-inch wide by 6-foot long pad. So yeah, 25-inch backpacking mattresses won't work. I can confirm because I only own 25-inch backpacking mattresses, so that's why I'm using one of the Thermarest little foam Z pads in here. But yeah, ideally I want to get like one of the mummy shaped backpacking pads to fit in here really nicely and give me just a little bit of extra room. I think one of those would be perfect for this style of tent. Inside the Lago 1, you also have one pocket and one hook for your light, and towards the bottom of the tent at the foot box you get some venting going on, which is really nice. So it's just like a passive venting. You can't really control it or close it up, but on the outside it has that little storm fly that bends over the pole there, and that's what's keeping all the rain out. And I think this is a really nice touch because there's not a lot of mesh going on in this tent for ventilation other than the top section. So having these key areas actually does a really good job for this size tent, and I feel like the venting is honestly adequate since you're pretty much only going to be in here to sleep. I don't imagine you're going to want to hang out inside this tent for very long, other than if you were to have the entire door open and you were sitting outside of it, to get that quick Instagram picture or whatever you're trying to do. And you can zip up the window vent on the door, so that one can be fully closed up if you want. And the entire door, you could just roll it back if you want to just keep it open while you're in there as well, to just give you a little bit of extra space. Yeah, I will say having that door open when you're trying to change clothes, you know, it does make things a lot easier inside of there. So at the top section here, there's a little bit of space. You could put some extra accessories, you know, phone chargers, all kinds of little things like that. But yeah, I'd say for minimalistic, you know, one person tents, like this is a really nice, comfortable option with decent head height, decent width, and you know, for a one person tent. I am speaking in terms of a one person tent. Now there are definitely bigger one person tents and there are definitely lighter one person tents out there. But the Lago one uses some pretty durable materials and it follows more of that kite shaped design. So it has a strong design to it and it also creates a just higher head height in there, which is really nice. So yeah, that's pretty much honestly the Lago one. There's not a ton to say about this thing. I mean, it's a one person solo minimalist backpacking tent. And I will say, like, it doesn't have to be for backpacking. So that's something to keep in mind. Like personally, I would use this as a more just minimalist overnight setup for myself. And I think there's a lot of benefits for going with a more minimalist route like this, because if you think about it, you know, going home, clean up, drying this thing out, if you ever need to recoat this one, it's going to be a lot simpler with such a small footprint tent. And, you know, if you were living in an apartment or if you just didn't want the extra hassle of having to maintain a larger tent, because believe it or not, there is maintenance involved with any tent. You know, you're going to have to clean it. You're going to have to dry it. Even if it's not raining, you know, packing these things up in the morning, it's still damp out. It's still wet. And if you just keep it in the stuff sack, for the next trip, it will probably be a disaster. So you're going to want to make sure you're maintaining all of this gear, and going with a tent this size is incredibly easy to maintain down the line. So that's where I see the value in going with something small like this that takes, you know, just minutes to set up and minutes to pack away and clean up. I'm not going to stand here and compare this to a 4-person, you know, Alpha Breeze, for instance, because totally different tents. For those of you who are looking for a more minimalist setup for just yourself for a quick overnight trip or, you know, multi-day trip out there, and a tent that you can also use for backpacking, because this weighs, you know, under 3 pounds. It's not the lightest, you know, on the market of backpacking tents, but that's still considered pretty lightweight. It is incredibly tiny because of the pole structure on it, and it can easily fit inside of your backpack, so you're not gonna have to worry about, you know, strapping things to the outside. So yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for the Lago one. And like I said in the beginning, it looks like this one's going to be discontinued from the site, so I'm not sure if they're planning on releasing a new version of it or they have something else that's coming. I'll probably find out pretty soon here on the Snow Peak Addicts Facebook group. And if you don't know what that is, it's a group we started a little over a year ago. We're sitting at like 4,000 members on there, so there's a ton of community on that group. It's just an awesome place, you know, to connect with others. So check out that group as well. I'll throw a link to it in the description. Also throw a link to the Lago one and just the other gear that I featured in this video. And those are affiliate links, so using those to make purchases helps the channel out a ton, so we appreciate that. Also, if you found this video at all helpful, if you could just go down there and hit the like button, drop a comment, even if it's just like an emoji, anything helps. And of course, you know, consider subscribing to the channel. All these things really do go a long way towards helping my channel grow, so thank you for that. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.